I was afraid of having accountability conversations. I wanted to be liked. My experience with accountability was it was judgmental, it was critical, it was harsh, it was full of conflict. And in my mind, I had this image that I didn't want to be that type of leader. I didn't want to treat the people that reported to me that way.
All right, welcome back to Leading Without the B.S. Unfiltered, unapologetic, and focused on unstoppable performance. Excited that I have a peer and a colleague and a friend joining me today, Bruce Stankavage, and excited for everyone out there that are our listeners and our audience to get to know a little bit more about Bruce. So, Bruce.
Great to be here, Mike.
Yeah, excited, man. So share a little bit about yourself, your journey.
Yes, I spent the last 26 years leading teams as an entrepreneur. I was responsible for developing, acquiring, and managing self-storage facilities, a portfolio of them. I was responsible for making high impactful decisions that had real consequences, and how I showed up really mattered.
For those of us that have not had those experiences and perhaps the pressures and challenges of being an entrepreneur and a business owner, describe what some of the responsibilities that came with that.
My days were always full and always different. And I say always specifically. One day I could be with $1 billion pension fund talking to them about investing in our portfolio. The next day I might be with a maintenance manager walking around the property, figuring out how to fix the roll-up doors. And then the following day, I could be with our accountants talking about the P&Ls and the budgets and what's going on in the performance of the property. I was responsible for all operations of our portfolio, which meant I oversaw all the profit and losses, hiring, firing, all performance issues. I was also responsible for sourcing deals, finding new locations, underwriting them, making projections, and then building the team to then execute. And so there was always something different and always a challenge to figure out how to solve.
I love the passion that comes across when you're talking about this, even in this moment. And then when you and I are just having conversations about our journey and what we have learned and how we put certain things into practice, it's really powerful. So I love that our audience is getting to see that as well. With the shift, stepping into your role now as a leadership performance advisor at Wingspan, what's the one thing that you are like, wow, as I look back, I wish I had this as I was in that role as a business owner?
Absolutely. It was setting clear expectations and avoiding accountability. Those were the two areas, as I look back on my leadership journey, that I was way off track. I was afraid of having accountability conversations. I wanted to be liked. That was my overarching focus. My experience with accountability was it was judgmental, it was critical, it was harsh. And so it was full of conflict. And in my mind, I had this image that I didn't want to be that type of leader. I didn't want to treat the people that reported to me that way. And so I focused on being liked, that I thought if they liked me, they would think like an owner, they would be like me and make decisions like me. I wasn't equipped. I didn't know any other way. And that at the time was my strategy to try to get the performance that I wanted. And it was ineffective. It was ineffective.
Yeah.
I was unintentionally, accidentally creating more problems for myself, for the team. That was the accountability piece and those clear expectations.
Yeah. And you mentioned I wasn't equipped. Yeah. Same for me, coming up through that journey. And we hear this oftentimes from many leaders that I step into a leadership role or perhaps a more advancing or expansive role or taking on more responsibility. And at times really all of the responsibility, and not being equipped to do that. So as you're shifting and you are being equipped with what accountability looks like, healthy accountability looks like, what has shifted in your internal thinking as you consider accountability now?
Yeah, it's a total mindset shift that accountability is a form of support. And it's a way to show that I care or that a leader cares about another person. That is so different than where I came from. And it's also, I'm glad you used the word, it's a mindset shift because it's perspective. It is my mindset. Now, when I have accountability conversations, I don't feel this angst like, it's conflict and they're not going to like me. It's a conversation, about expectations and what happened and what didn't happen. It's much more fact-based now than it was in my past.
Many times when I start working with leaders in this role and supporting leaders within Wingspan, and we talk about accountability, people sit up and are like, "Oh wow, accountability! What does that mean?" We don't always have the best experience with that word or how it's been delivered to us. And what I love what you're talking about is that shift. I've had the similar shift that actually it provides clarity. When I'm giving you clear expectations on what you're accountable for, it provides so much clarity, helps me determine what are my priorities, what does good look like, and then it creates the space that, okay, hey, I'm counting on you. I see you as a really strong, you are a really strong, powerful leader, and I'm counting on you to deliver those results. The organization is counting on you. And so providing that clarity around expectations and then accountability, that's where it is support. It's so awesome.
And Mike, you model that within Wingspan, that when we work together a fair amount and you lay out some things for me and you are very clear that what I'm required to do when it's due. Okay, I'd like a feedback on this, Friday by 2 p.m. And I'm like, great. Friday at 2 p.m. is when Mike expects this back. And it frees me up mentally then to sort my calendar and to sort my priorities. And I remember a quote from Brene Brown that clarity is kindness. As you are clear with me and I'm clear with other folks that it's an element of kindness and it frees me mentally. So I see you modeling that, and I have a long way to go in terms of that. But yeah, I appreciate that very much.
Thank you for acknowledging me. I really respect you, and so it's awesome to hear that's had that impact. What I see, what excites me is when I see the shift in the leaders that we're working with. Some of these leaders, most of these leaders that we're supporting are in really dynamic organizations. There's a lot on their plates. Even as we're meeting with folks, their inboxes are filling up and their Teams messages are going off and their cell phones are going crazy because they're being counted on to deliver a lot. And it's awesome to see the shift when they're seeing that, oh, wow, having really clear accountability and expectations for what am I being counted on for provides that clarity. It is support. It is caring, because now I can focus. I can filter and prioritize what I'm working on. And then it's clear for everyone on what's being expected.
And what's amazing to me is the leaders that I've worked with at larger companies, they don't have any training in accountability. And that's where when we come in and I just share one or two sentences like I did today about accountability as a form of support and care, they're like, what? No, it's conflict and it's judgment and condemnation. And I'm like, no, I hear you. Me too. That's how I learn leadership and accountability, and at Wingspan, that's not how we approach it. And lay it out as I count and you count. And again, it comes back to support. And I'm like, that is mind boggling to a lot of them. And you see them, then their shoulder, they take a deep breath and they're like, oh, okay. I'm capable of having that type of conversation. The other thing, Mike, that comes to my mind with accountability is externally observable behaviors that we talk about. And as I reflect back on my career, the accountability piece and having those harder conversations, I was afraid of them because it felt like I was judging them. And I wasn't separating out who they were as a person from their behavior. And one of a perspective that we have is this externally observable behavior of what is someone showing up as, or what are their behaviors that they're exhibiting, and talking about accountability or I'm jumping into a little bit of feedback is that when I can look at someone's externally observable behavior, that's fact-based, that if you looked at them and I looked at them on a camera, it would be the same thing. For me and for many of the leaders that I've talked to is, again, they take a deep breath and they sigh because they realize, oh, I can write down their externally observable behaviors. That's not a judgment. That's not a condemnation of their personality. This is just what they're displaying. And it separates the person from the behavior.
And yeah, so powerful that you touched on externally observable behaviors. And I have seen that shift in many leaders as we've supported them as well through what does that look like, and helping people to find what at times it can be subjective. It helps it to become more objective. As you mentioned, if you and I are in the same room, we can see those behaviors. It actually reminds me of a situation where I was supporting a leader. And this leader was open and willing to receive the feedback and wanted to grow, though didn't have clarity in the messaging that he was getting from individuals within his organization. And he said, I'm continually told that I am challenging to work with, or that my communication style is not effective. Man, I don't know what to do with that. And so as we partnered together, I said, okay, hey, you said you're not sure what that looks like. Here's some things that I have observed. What you're showing, your externally observable behaviors, is that you step on people. So you're talking over them. You ask a question and then you don't leave space for people to answer. And I saw that shift just when he heard that, and he looked at me and was like, wow. And then I can do something with that. That is those behaviors I can shift. It helps paint a picture and a target. Now I've got a target. So I love that you mentioned those externally observable behaviors.
And it's not subjective. It's not your opinion. It's what we saw, and it's written down. I had a conversation earlier today with a leader, and he was talking about a lone wolf. One of his people was a lone wolf. And I said, well, what does a lone wolf look like? Because a lone wolf to you could mean this, a lone wolf to them could mean this, and a lone wolf to somebody else could mean this. And so we had a conversation of describing the behaviors of a lone wolf in the context of a team environment. And I saw the light go on, in his head as he just started like, oh yeah, I see it, this, and this. And we talked about separating it out so that, again, going back to the clarity of communication with that, of what does that look like? That's a question that I ask often of folks to dial into the clarity.
As you've made your transition into a leadership performance advisor here at Wingspan, it's like, wow, what's that one thing? You mentioned setting clear expectations and accountability as a form of healthy support. Now considering that for yourself and seeing it from that perspective and being equipped, what are some ways you've already started to implement that for yourself?
For clear expectations, it was for me, is setting my own expectations of how do I want to show up? What type of person do I want to be? What type of leadership advisor? Behaviorally, what does that look like? What type of husband do I want to be to my wife? What type of father do I want to be to my 3 boys? And it's required me to slow down
Mm.
and get clear on my own expectations as a person first and foremost, and to get to work on my mindset and be like, okay, when I come home and I walk in that door, I have an expectation that I'm going to be present and listen to my family and not shut down and turn on the TV. And that's an area of growth for me to do that, where I had a tendency and a pattern after working, just, I'm on vacation when I'm at home, and that's not the father and the person that I want to be.
It's outstanding that you are asking yourself those questions of how do I want to show up? What do I want to be? What's most important to me in this situation? And that you're choosing to shift and change those behaviors, and really holding yourself accountable to that practice. So yeah, outstanding. And
let me ask you, Mike, what's one of the biggest shifts for you as you've been a Wingspan advisor for a while now?
Many. And though what is very interesting when we talk about expectations is that not saying it out loud, having internally, having expectations for others, or understanding what the expectations of a role is within an organization, though not saying it out loud, not being clear in my communications, that was something that became very evident that I didn't practice regularly, and now am more intentional, especially as I'm stepping in to support other leaders in their organization. It's amazing how many times I have been working with a leader and they're frustrated with how someone is showing up or how someone is underperforming. And I'll ask, what's happening? What is some specific things that are off track? And they can share, these leaders, as they're sharing with me, can answer that question so clearly and define exactly what the expectations are for that individual or for that role. And then I might ask, how have you communicated that? And the eyes get big, and you mentioned earlier the light bulb comes on. I haven't, and it's really powerful to say it out loud. It sounds so simple, though oftentimes we don't. And sometimes even in the closest, most important relationships that we have, that I don't say it out loud at times. And so, yeah, my focus and shift has been to remind myself of to what those internal thoughts and those expectations, to clarify them externally.
Yeah, that resonates with me as well, because I have this narrative going on in my brain at all times. And I find myself having these conversations with people, and I don't say it out loud. And so being here at Wingspan and learning and watching, and it is such a simple thing. Yeah. Kathy's asked me in the past, did you say that out loud? And I'm like, no. And what stopped me from saying it out loud, or how come I didn't, though perhaps not helpful questions, it was prompting me that, yeah, I want to say it out loud, and I want to communicate what's going through my mind as well. So yeah, that resonates for me.
And building off of that, what you said really prompted and reminded me of a conversation that I was having with a leader just last week, where we were talking about, influencing others, and that we're 100% responsible for ourselves. And so our contribution is the language that we're using, the questions that we're asking, and how are we seeking to influence those other individuals in that situation. And that's where, going back to what you building off of, you prompted me, is that's where the power is. I can set clear expectations. I can better define what requirements. There are, I can hold myself and other people accountable in a supportive way. And that is how I'm contributing to the situation. That's where I have the power versus at times where, how do I influence this individual? How do I shift this situation? And it can seem overwhelming at times. And so it's really powerful to know I have the power to take action. And these are the ways that I can show up differently.
Well, it reminds me of taking 100% responsibility, which was easy for me with my background as an entrepreneur. I remember I chose to terminate an employee, not because of performance. It was because cash flow. We were running out of money. And I made the decision, like, I have to let her go. And she was a family friend. And I remember sitting in my office before the meeting, looking around and like, man, I wish somebody else could have this conversation. I wanted to avoid this difficult conversation. And I had the conversation. I remember walking out of the meeting and she's weeping. And it was just a lesson for me of taking the responsibility and making those hard decisions. And I say that the flip side of that is when we talk about co-creating and taking 100% responsibility, my tendency and my pattern is to be overly responsible. I let the other person off the hook. Oh, it was all my fault. All Bruce's fault. You didn't do anything. You're off the hook. And that's not accurate either. It may sound like, oh, I'm taking full responsibility. That's not helpful. That's not a productive leadership behavior. 'Cause in those moments, I'm letting the other person off the hook and not offering an opportunity for them to think about, well, how did they contribute to this?
What is perhaps some more supportive language in a situation like that?
It's talking about situations are co-creating. Like, we're here talking, having a conversation, and we're creating it together. And so it's for me to say, hey, this is a partnership. We're working together. I have a role, and you have a role. So here's my contribution. Here's what I did or didn't do, or here's how I showed up or didn't show up. How did you show up? How do you think you could have contributed to what's going on here? It's not one or the other. We all have a role. And I think that from a leadership perspective, that's also a healthy perspective. Because again, I took all the ownership and let them off the hook, or I'll flip the other way. It was all their fault. And so I become the villain, and I blame the other person. That's not accurate. There's two parties involved. So it's owning mine and then asking them how they contributed and having ideas in my head.
Yeah. You said it earlier. It's as simple as I count, you count.
Yeah.
We each have a contribution in these situations, whether accidental or intentional. And you also mentioned something really powerful that at times as a leader, you as an entrepreneur and a business owner, even leaders in these organizations and the leaders that we support, where jumping in and stepping in and taking responsibility for things that they don't own is a form of support. And it's not supportive for them or the people that they're leading to provide better clarity of what are you being counted on for? These are, and it's also going back to language that we hear at times that is not as supportive and helping leaders to shift is I have these expectations or my expectations. They're expectations of the role. They're expectations of the organization. They're what you're being counted on to complete. And so it's not an opinion-based situation. It's not, I have these expectations. Oh, wow, Mike is this overbearing manager that just has really high expectations. No, hey, in this role, this is what you're accountable for.
And required.
Absolutely.
Again, it takes away the personal element of it. and objectifies the role in the situation
Yeah, certain.
and clarifies it.
As you are supporting other leaders as a leadership advisor, what are some of the ways that you help them to shift their mindset around accountability or feedback?
Asking them what their experience with being held accountable look like, to better understand what their mindset is, what their frame of reference is, and then and talking about it's a form of support and it's a form of care. Like I said earlier, it demystifies it, because like I said, I didn't read in any textbook or any leadership manual. I have a graduate degree in counseling psychology about accountability. We didn't talk about accountability. And so demystifying it, when we say I count, you count, as a form of support, people are like, oh, I get that. That's simple, clear language. And again, that's where the light bulb goes off. And then I see the confidence come back where, again, oh, I can have that conversation.
For sure.
And so they regain their powerful self of having it, and as opposed to going into a conversation timid and afraid and so on. So seeing that shift in real time, it makes me smile, because I'm right there with them. I'm like, yeah, me too. I've been there.
That's awesome you say that. I love the excitement that you have. And it reminded me that we have a lot of similarities in being fathers and having, history as an athlete. And I was talking to a leader today, and we were talking about accountability and that word, and sometimes what that might sound like to them, or the history that folks have had with accountability. And I was sharing that when I think about my children, and when I set clear expectations for them or hold them accountable, there's no one on this earth that I care more about. And when I'm providing them with that clarity of what I'm expecting of them, and then giving some feedback and accountability, there's no one that I care about more than those two individuals. And it helps me remember that if I'm doing this with the people that I care about the most, it is certainly a healthy form of support for everyone else that I'm partnering with. When I am willing to be very clear and honest and unfiltered with those people closest to me, I am certain, and I'm certain for other leaders, that when we do that with the other people that we interact with, that it is a form of support.
And what I love about Wingspan that I was not aware of when I first joined is that all the work that we do doesn't just apply business-wise. It applies to us personally and in some of our most important relationships at home. This is not just about business, and it is about business, of course, and results and improving performance and improving leadership 100%. But we are whole people that we bring into our jobs. And the beautiful part is, yes, these people are making leaps and light bulbs are going off business-wise. But when I hear stories and leaders tell me stories, is like what you prompted me with, Bruce, I took it home and it impacted my relationship with my wife and my kids. And that gives me chills, because I'm like, yes, yes, it's the impact and the influence that we have is so much more than just in the business world. And that's what excites me. That's why I'm here, is because it's deeper than the business. It's business and personal. And that's important to me. And I wouldn't be here if we didn't offer that organically. We don't start out there. A lot of times it ends up going there because we're people that have other lives than working 40, 50, 80 hours a week, that we do have personal lives.
For sure. And your externally observable behaviors reflect the passion
Mm-hmm.
that you bring to this role. It's exciting to work with you and see the impact that this system and these tools are having on you as an individual, on the leaders that you support, and us as friends and as colleagues. It's awesome to see that impact. For those people that are listening that don't work with Wingspan, still might even hear the word accountability and tighten up. What's one thing that you can share with them to start to shift what that word means?
Yeah, I think hearing your question, I think the first thing I would do, and I did it right here, is I smile and I'd be like, I hear you, me too. And accountability is not something to fear.
Mm.
It really is an element of support and care. And your example of your home life, what's more important than that? Nothing. And so accountability is not a word for us to fear. Like, let's practice it in small ways. Let's not have this huge accountability conversation, about some life-changing thing. Let's perhaps start with yourself, and be clear on how you're holding yourself accountable. That was a long-winded answer to your question, but accountability isn't something to fear.
Love it. And you also reminded me that something to speak out loud is that accountability doesn't equal disciplinary action.
Yes.
Sometimes when leaders hear accountability, it's, that's a performance improvement plan.
Yeah.
That's a formal write-up. Accountability comes at all different levels of intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And a simple accountability conversation might sound like you were off track in the way that you showed up in that meeting. Mm-hmm. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Or you missed a deadline. What happened?
Mm-hmm.
That's a low-level intensity conversation around accountability. It's not required to have a tremendous amount of prep. It's not required to go get HR involved.
Hey, Bruce, let's sit down and have an accountability conversation. And then if you say that to me, I'd be like, oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. Accountability, and that's where accountability is a form of support.
Yeah.
And it is as simple as what you shared earlier is I count and you count. So love that. What's one thing that you want to share with our listeners that we haven't already touched on today?
To address where someone is off track sooner than later. We were with some leaders last week, and a pattern that I noticed is how they would wait and delay and or hesitate having conversations, accountability conversations, or conversations that were off track. And I did it. I mean, I delayed having these conversations and hesitated because I wanted to be liked. I saw the problem. And many of the leaders that I've talked to see the problem. It's they're not saying it out loud, or they delay, or they hesitate, whatever the reason is. My challenge to myself and to those leaders is, how can you address it sooner? How can you say it out loud sooner? My experiences, as I've waited to have these conversations, what happens? My intensity, you mentioned the word, goes from a 0 to a 10, where I'm all fine and my nature is to be excited and pretty calm. And then all of a sudden I explode and be like, what happened? How could you do this? And they're looking at me like, what do you mean? I thought everything was fine. Well, because I didn't say it out loud. So again, to address it sooner, to have the conversation. And for many leaders, it's to have the courage to have the conversation sooner when someone is off track.
For sure. It doesn't get easier. And if you truly care, you care for someone, you're going to have that accountability conversation sooner, because you're expecting that they will deliver and they can make that shift. And so it's easier for you. It's a form of care for the person that you're providing that input to. around how they're showing up and what they're accountable for. Absolutely.
One other thing, Mike, that you prompted me is with these accountability conversations is there is a range of intensity. And as we work with leaders, there's an element of sharing and teaching them how to navigate and modulate the accountability conversations, where my experience, again, it was a 0 or a 10. And I was like, when I first started talking with you and Kathy and Ivan, it's like, oh my gosh, like there's other options. It's not like light switch. I'm not 0. It's not on or off. It's, I can actually ramp up this conversation from, hey, you were off track, or, what happened, and then layer it. And that was eye-opening for me to learn and to support other folks in that it's because so many people either go from, high intensity or no intensity.
Certainly. I love that you touched on that, and that you're able to do that through the words that you use and the language that you use. It's not required that I'm raising my voice and yelling and coming, intimidating. It is with clarity. The language that I use, the words that I choose intentionally. So if, hey, you've been off track, you've missed repeated deadlines, and it's having a major impact to our customers, what are you doing to correct this? That's a higher level of intensity conversation than what we were talking about earlier. And it doesn't require that I raise my voice or act unprofessionally or lose control of my emotions.
And that's well said. That's in my mind. That's where I was going. Is to my experience with intensity was visible. Like if someone was intense, it was obvious. Like I could see it in their face, their body, their tone, their and what you're describing is it's an art form of intentionally mapping out language to raise the intensity, and that was a fantastic example. And that was one of the more eye-opening things to learn that here. And I remember I struggled with the word intensity at first, and I had conversations with you and Ivan. I didn't like that word. I'd put it in the category of accountability. Accountability, intensity. Intensity's like overwhelming, and I was overwhelmed by others' intensity. Yeah. And again, as you've explained it, and Ivan and Kathy, I'm like, oh no, intensity, there's an appropriateness when we manage the intensity, because as you shared that language, you're getting my attention. The second or third sentence, like, you have my attention. I don't remember exactly what you said, but I could, I'm perking up.
Shifting out of autopilot.
Yes.
Certainly.
100%.
So intentionally shifting out of autopilot, you talked about appropriate level of intensity. That intensity, that choosing those words that are going to be appropriate for that situation to shift you out of autopilot, so that I sound different, and it's likely going to influence how you're listening and what you're picking up on, for sure.
Absolutely. And the appropriate, Kathy would say, effective, not appropriate. Yeah. I've used that word several times, and she go, Bruce, effective, not appropriate.
Love
just
it.
having a little
love
fun
it.
there.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
That's all.
Yeah.
We're all a work in progress.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm certain that all of you, I'm so excited each day, and I truly, really, it's mean this, that I'm excited every day that when I get to work with Bruce, and I'm certain that as all of you have been introduced to Bruce today, you're wanting more, and there's more to come. So really excited to hear about the shift that Bruce has made as he's made this transition, how we support leaders, and for all of you to remember that accountability is as simple as I count, you count. When you start with that intention and that mindset, you are shifting towards that being a true form of support. And so glad that you're all spending time with us today, and expecting that you're going to remember that you count, and continue leading without the BS.